What you have to focus on there are repeatable, predictable systems. You have to take everything and turn it into a business model.
And for the, let's say the scaling secret for the, let's say the mid-level company who's had some success, but hasn't broken through until maybe that next level. Maybe they're doing $1 million in revenue and they should be at 10 or 15 potentially with what they have. Give us kind of that type of story, right? Which is they've had success, but they haven't broken through. And then let's talk about how networking and the power of collaboration with what you provide has helped them to do that.
Sure. Just to show the story, there's seed funding, there's Series A funding, the $1 million company you talked about, and then Series B. And what you'll find is that what you must do at each level is different for your business. At the seed level, the entrepreneur is trying to convince the investor that he can sell the product, and that's what it's all about: is can you sell it? When you get to the Series A level, it's no longer about selling it. We know you can sell it. It's about growing the business. Can you grow it from $1 to $10 million? And what you have to focus on there are repeatable, predictable systems. You have to take everything and turn it into a business model that you can turn the crank and it rolls forward in a repeatable, predictable way. So when I was at my day job, we had this model we built up where it was a 3-step process. We go to a trade show, get a lead or a series of leads, come back, mail to them, invite them to a seminar. Some portion came out to the seminar and learned how our product worked. And then at the end we actually ran a closing process where an internal salesperson called up and closed them. And we had that thing modeled out. We knew how many leads we needed at the top, how many seminars we had to run, how many calls we had to make, and then how much revenue we would generate. So you need to identify a business model that how it works. It's predetermined in time and dollars what it takes to run that business. And so that's what we find a lot of when companies hit the $1 million mark. What they've been doing is a lot of ad hoc selling and working and so forth, but it's now time to sit down and map out exactly what is the repeatable process we're going to put into place for each step: qualifying, closing the lead, and maturing the lead. And that's what you have to do.
What's the biggest false belief for that entrepreneur who's listening right now, who has that $1 million or so and has been stuck there for a while, in order to move from the seed portion to the grow from 1 to 10 million?
The biggest mistake people make is they think they can just keep doing what they're doing. And what got you there is not going to take you to the next level. When you get to the $1 million, you have to change what you're doing. You now have to do something different. Instead of just working on adding another salesperson, you really need to think more holistically about the company and how did you generate that lead? How did that lead flow to the salesperson? How did it get closed? How did the customer get serviced? And then you have to actually work on the systems, not just the ad hoc principles you may have done before.
What's the one hire that could help them to start that process today? What would that ideal team player look like? Is that an operations manager? Is that a HR professional who's finding the right people? Is that someone who's in accounting? I mean, walk us through that hard driving CEO, salesperson, probably strength. Who is it that they need to hire to move them away from seed to grow?
It's typically a COO. Most startups start off with a lean startup model, a skeletal group, and everybody's wearing multiple hats. And they typically have a CEO, they have a CTO, maybe they have one other, but they almost never have a COO. When you get to the $1 million, now's the time you've hired the COO with a strong emphasis on the sales process. That's what you have to really automate, is that sales process, and then build everything else in the company around to support that model.
Define a COO so it doesn't get confused with a CFO or a founder, or what is a proper definition of a COO?
So it's a chief operations officer, and they're looking at the actual day-to-day operations of the business, setting up processes, procedures, and actually seeing how well those processes are running. You're metricing those processes. You're defining those processes. One thing you do at the $1 million mark is you actually write out every job, every step, every process, every procedure. It's all written out. It's all defined. So when you hire somebody, they come in, these pages are yours, these steps are yours, and then you can go put metrics on those as well. Typically it's been done kind of by the CEO and maybe by a CFO in some ways, but it's really never been a focus of anybody's. But now the process really comes to the fore. You have to really drive that process in a big way and optimize it as well.
How do your services or your network help train COOs to do just that?
So what we do is we help startups and investors connect for funding. And one of the things we look for is what we call a growth story. When a company is raising funding, what the investor wants to see is that the growth story is happening. Sales, team, product, fundraise, things are clicking up and to the right. If you have that, you're going to raise funding. If you don't have that, what most entrepreneurs do is fall back onto the forecast. And they're basically saying, well, I don't have it today, but one day I will. And so what we have to do is go out and help them tell their growth story. And in fact, it's more than just tell it, it's demonstrate it. We put out updates every week to our network saying these guys have increased sales here. They've hired a new team member. They've added more funding to their process because they've closed more investors. And when they don't have that, well, then we have to sit down and talk to them about their process. And in most cases, it's an operations thing that they're missing.
Amazing. By the way, you can learn more about Hall Martin at investorconnect.org. And he also has a podcast called Investor Connect. So much wisdom there, Hall.